program features our very own Professor Alan J. Zaremba, discussing the social phenomenon of March Madness and the related frenzied betting that ensues in Vegas and across the country. Dr. Alan Zaremba earned his doctorate from the University of Buffalo and his undergraduate degree from the University of Albany. He has won the Northeastern University Excellence in Teaching Award on 2 occasions. And prior to coming to Northeastern, Dr. Zaremba was recipient of the State University of New York Chancellor's Award for Excellence in Teaching. Zaremba was one of 2 alums in 2001 to receive his undergraduate alma mater's Excellence in Education Award, and has also received the Department of Communication Studies Communication Club Award for Excellence in Teaching. So obviously there's a theme here. Dr. Zaremba is an outstanding educator. In 2006, 2 of Dr. Zaremba's books on organizational communication issues, Speaking Professionally, I'm sure some of you have heard about that, and Organizational Communication were published by Thomson Southwestern. In 2009, his most recent book describing sports subculture was published by the University of Nebraska Press. The 3rd edition of his organizational communication textbook is scheduled to be published in late 2009. Another book, wow, I'm exhausted, Crisis Communication Theory and Practice, will be published in the fall of 2009. In addition to Dr. Zaremba's appointment in the Arts and Sciences Department of Communication Studies, Dr. Zaremba is involved with interdisciplinary work with the College of Professional Studies, Business, and Engineering. In terms of basketball, here we go, stuff. Well, you can comment on this. Alan played for a University of Albany freshman team, and he put in parentheses weak. Although I think playing for any team is maybe, and spent some time coaching youngsters in recreational basketball leagues. Alan has very little wisdom regarding betting on basketball, except to inform all that no matter how knowledgeable you might be, you are likely to lose wagering on college basketball. Welcome, Dr. Zaremba.
Thank you very much. That was nice. Thank you. Again, thank you for inviting me to participate in this series. And also thanks to the Department of Communication Studies for sponsoring this as well, and my colleagues are here, and I appreciate your attendance. What I thought I'd do today is I'd put up, just so some of my students would hear and they would know who they were dealing with, if this advances. No, it's not. But what I thought I would do today is a number of things. I just want to... Okay. Talk a little bit about how I got into this book, why I started writing this book, what I did, what I found out because of what I did, and some of the characters that I met. And then I have some conclusions. And at the end, if anybody has some questions, I'd be delighted to respond to them. So, how did I get into this? In 2001, I heard about an article that was written that described or listed the 99 things to do before you died. And one of them was to go to Las Vegas during March Madness. And then I read an article that was in Sports Illustrated that had the same message. You know, you've got to go to Las Vegas before you die. So I went, and it was a very unusual experience. It was just as advertised. Very idiosyncratic individuals, sports fans that were enjoying themselves, and I had a great time. This was in 2001. And in 2002 I did not go, but I went again in 2003 again. It was a blast. The advertisement that this was one of the things to do before you died seemed to make sense to me. In fact, I just came back from Richmond, where Northeastern University was participating in the Colonial Athletic Association tournament. I was sat next to a fellow who said, going to Las Vegas ought to be on every sports fan's bucket list. And this is the thing to do before you die. But what happened in 2004 is, I said there's a book in this. This is a subculture. This is an interesting subculture to examine. And I started becoming a note taker and a researcher, looking at people who I would interact with in Las Vegas. I wrote a prospectus and sent it out to various publishers, and the University of Nebraska Press was interested. When I originally proposed the book, I proposed it as, the title was Bonding and Betting with the Boys, March Madness in Las Vegas, because that's what I was doing. I was hanging out with people who were bettors, and I was bonding with them and, to some extent, betting with them. So I carried around these yellow pads. I asked questions. I became what is known as a participant observer. I went to the University of Nevada, Las Vegas Center for Gambling Studies, which was unusual. I mean, there are esoteric journals in every field. Blackjack Forum is housed in this library. Journal of Gambling Studies. Strictly Slots is another periodical that's housed in the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. I met with sportsbook managers who told me about what it was like to be a sportsbook manager. The sportsbook is the part of the casino where you can bet on sporting events, like basketball games, baseball games, anything that you like. And I met with them. One of these three actually allowed me to use his name. The other two, while they were helpful to me, they said to change their names, and I did. So what I found was that the people that go there are fans. They're not degenerates. They're fans, people who enjoy basketball, and this is a lark for them. Now, the first excerpt that I'm going to read might not reflect that, because it might seem as if these people are a little bit too far gone with their passion. It comes from the prologue of the book, and it takes place in 2003. In 2003, I was going to Las Vegas. I was in Tampa, and my brother was at the airport, at Kennedy Airport, and we were going to meet in Las Vegas, and this is in the prologue of the book. The first weekend of the NCAA basketball tournament brings a dedicated legion of basketball bettors to Las Vegas. From early Thursday morning until Sunday evening, men, and the crowd is overwhelmingly male, sit in rowdy, smoky casinos watching up to 48 college basketball games. Who are these people? They pay to fly out to Las Vegas, spend money on lodging, sit for 4 days straight watching basketball games, and often lose hundreds of dollars on near misses and if-onlys, and yet, as they taxi to the airport on Sunday evening, they are planning their betting strategy for the following year with undiminished passion. In March 2003, the NCAA considered canceling the NCAA tournament because the start of the games coincided with the beginning of the Iraq War. On Tuesday evening, March 18th, during an internationally televised address, President George Bush announced that Saddam Hussein had 24 hours to give himself up. If Hussein did not do so, sometime after the 24 hours had elapsed, the United States would strike. On Wednesday night, 24 hours later to the minute, 2 plane loads of basketball bettors waited by an America West gate at New York's Kennedy Airport. Both flights were completely sold out. Above the bar where the travelers were clustered, television anchors described the any minute now beginnings of international war. The men at the bar paid no attention to newscaster Peter Jennings. They were looking at their NCAA tournament brackets. On Thursday morning, hours after the United States had launched its attack, the tension at the Tampa International Airport was palpable. Reporters randomly asked passengers if they were unnerved. Baggage underwent more scrutiny than usual, and security at the airport was extensive. I boarded my Southwest flight to Las Vegas with some anxiety. I was not settled into my seat for more than 2 minutes when a fellow in front of me, a stranger, turned around and asked me if I thought if Marquette could cover the spread. Later that day, I was seated in the Paris Hotel on Las Vegas Boulevard, the Strip, watching the games. The Paris Theater was filled with bettors from all over the country who apparently were not troubled by the international crisis. 4 movie screens were suspended from the ceiling above the stage. The well-oiled spectators who filled the theater were focused on the 4 basketball games projected on the giant screens. When Dan Rather periodically interrupted the contests with reports from Baghdad, the booing in the theater was deafening. Who are these guys? The first words he reads in the morning are in the sports section of the newspaper. He pores over these pages while drinking coffee, chewing his toast, and using the bathroom. He studies box scores like a scholar, examining minute details of important texts. At the end of the week, when he picks up the clutter that has accrued in the apartment, he finds folded up sports pages from days ago that have been left near the toilet. He is familiar with the traditional fall, winter, spring, and summer seasonal designations, but nevertheless tends to identify portions of the year by what sport is played. Autumn is not so much autumn, it's football season. April does not mark the beginning of spring, but baseball season. His index to personal history uses this method to organize and recollect data. Sure, I remember when I had my last checkup. It was during football season. It was on a Monday after the game where the Packers beat the Bears in overtime. He can identify the entire rosters of the teams to which he has allegiance. He is buoyed by his team's victories and depressed by their defeats. On some nights, he cannot fall asleep after a close game that has ended in a loss or after he has watched a particularly exciting contest. He's an unusually superstitious person. He stands on one foot when an opponent is shooting a crucial free throw because on a number of occasions, this posture has jinxed players at critical points. Near the end of an NFL playoff game, he once forbid the 15-year-old daughter of a friend from going to the bathroom because the teenager had been, up until then, seated in a place that he deemed to be a lucky spot. ESPN has been a godsend for him. Life before SportsCenter seems like a primitive era, akin to a past when one had to live without indoor plumbing or electricity. He would sooner walk barefoot over broken glass than move to an area that did not have cable television. The proliferation of sports on television with ESPN, ESPN2, the NFL Network, and other dedicated sports channels has made a substantive difference in his life. When he met a woman on a blind date, and she told him she does not understand the big deal made in this country about sports, he knew that the relationship would not launch. He thinks his friend Mark's wife, a Jets fan, who wears her Pennington jersey every Sunday, even during bye weeks, is a true find. Mark, he often marvels, hit the jackpot. His refrigerator magnets pin the menus from Chinese restaurants and submarine shops. The schedule for the Boston Red Sox obscures the emergency numbers for the fire and police departments. He considers that a genuine advantage to living on the West Coast is to be able to watch Sunday football games beginning at 10 a.m. When he first walked into a Las Vegas sports book on the morning of the initial Thursday of the NCAA basketball tournament, he felt that he was in heaven. So that's the first part of the book, which tries to set the mood for the characters that I've met. Now, if you were to just hear that, you would think that my take on these people is that they're obsessed. And to some extent, they are obsessed. They like sports a great deal. But what I discovered was that for these people, this trip was a vacation. It was no different, really, than another person going to Disney World. You can't win betting on college basketball. You can't. Interestingly, a reader, somebody who read the book, wrote me a note and said, "I really liked your book, Bob," and he was very nice. He was very nice. And at the end he said, "And you know what? Something you said gave me an idea of how I can bet and win." This killed me because I always lose. There could be nothing that I wrote in this book that would indicate how you could be successful. But these people, they've got an idea that's a passion. It's fun, but you can't win. So this is an amusement park trip for them. I also found that many people had their own special teams, and they would not bet on their special teams. That is, they bet on the other games, but when their teams were playing, they didn't want to bet because they would get too nervous. The way betting goes in Las Vegas is a team plays another, and a bookmaker decides what the differential is likely to be. So if Albany is playing Virginia, they might say, well, Virginia is going to win by 7 points. You bet on your team to score, if you're betting on Virginia, you're betting on your team to defeat Albany by more than 7 points. So bettors who liked Virginia wouldn't want to bet on their team because they would be afraid that they would lose the excitement of the game because they might win by 5 points and lose the bet. The team might win by 5 points and lose the bet. So it's a fan subculture. I think some people do drink too much. There's a lot of booze, a lot of beer. People curse too much. I've been to bars and I've listened to language, but I don't think I've ever heard language like you hear in sports books. It really is pervasive. People who think some people eat too much. The buffets in Las Vegas, like everything else, are over the top. And there were enormous people who ate enormously while I was there. But they seemed to enjoy themselves. There were some people who I think were betting on games that they shouldn't have bet on. That is, they were betting too much money, it seemed to me. But this was about fandom. So the next part I'm going to read is about fandom, about somebody I met in New York who was a fan. Let me set this up for you. Before I went to Las Vegas each year, the book is about 2007. Before I went to Las Vegas in 2007, I went to the preliminary tournaments. I went to the America East. I went to the Colonial Athletic Association Conference. I went to the Big East. And I did this, I really didn't know what I might find out, but I thought I might find something out about people who are passionate about the game. And I was able to get a media pass. So I was actually in the room with the real pundits, or the people who think they're pundits. Backstage in Madison Square Garden, that is behind the game, there's a big room, and in the room there's a place where players are interviewed after a game. And then there's a place where the journalists sit, and then there's a cafeteria for the journalists and the players, some of the players and the coaches, to eat at. And in this scene, I am sitting at a table in the cafeteria after Syracuse has defeated Connecticut, and I find myself sitting next to a Syracuse fan who also owns his own business. It is here at the cafeteria where I sit talking to a fellow named Roger from Syracuse, who is the chief executive officer of a company employed by the Big East and other conferences. Our conversation is interesting and entertaining. I discover that this young man, who is no more than 35 years old, is here to work the games, but is also enjoying the tournament as a general basketball enthusiast, and more significantly, a rabid fan of the Syracuse Orange. Roger is breathing easily because Syracuse has defeated the Connecticut Huskies in the first round. Only 15 minutes ago, Syracuse players described the game as a team win. This is in the interview section. They would go and they'd be interviewed by journalists, and the Syracuse players said it was a team win, how their players, everyone played to their potential, and that they were satisfied with the result. Roger describes the contest to me in far more detail, as only an informed zealot can. His recall of Syracuse statistics and minutiae is remarkable. When he completes the post-game analysis, I tell him that I am impressed. I'm a true fan, he says. You are. Got a funny story for you. You do? This is a funny story. Be good for your book. My wife will never let me forget this. True story. All right? True story. This will give you an idea how far gone I am. You want to hear the story? Sure, I want to hear the story. Okay. The year they won the tournament, 2002, 2003, I got into this thing. Superstitious habit. You're superstitious? When it comes to the Orange, I will do pretty much anything. This story will illustrate just what I'm talking about here. Roger takes a sip of a soft drink before continuing. Okay, before the first game of the tournament, I was hungry, so I ate 2 hot dogs just before tip-off. We won the game. So I remember this just before the second game, which is, only 2 days later. I figure since we won the first game after I ate the hot dogs, just to be safe, I should eat 2 hot dogs before the second game. So I eat 2 hot dogs before the second game. We win again. Now we have won 2 games after I've eaten 2 hot dogs. When the next round starts, I'm afraid not to eat the hot dogs. You know where I'm going on this? I think so, I say. I think you're going to be eating hot dogs all through the tournament. Well, yeah, but there's more. Okay, so I've been eating these hot dogs, right? But now it's not good enough to only eat the 2 hot dogs. I have to remember if I put mustard and relish on them, and which I put on first, the mustard or the relish, so they don't jinx the team by putting on the relish before the mustard, if the last time I put on the mustard before the relish. Sure, I say. Wouldn't want to jinx the team. Yeah, right, make fun. So I'm fixing these 2 hot dogs and eating them before the games, and we keep winning. Okay, it's the Kansas game. The final, Monday night. I don't know if it's nerves or what, but I developed this horrible stomach ache. Feels like a stomach virus. You ever have one of those, you can't hold anything down, you don't want to eat anything, can't think of eating anything, can't even smell food without fearing that you will have to run to the toilet? You must have had these. Sure, I say, they're awful. Right, awful, but feel like you're always going to heave. They're horrible. Right, okay. I have this stomach virus type of thing before the Kansas game. Now I have a problem. You know I'm gone because I have this problem. What's the problem? The problem is, should I or shouldn't I eat the 2 hot dogs? You're kidding. Not kidding. You own your own company? Yeah, I own my own company. Tell me you ate 2 smelly hot dogs with mustard and relish when you had a stomach virus. I ate the hot dogs. Took one for the team. Took one for the team. Could not let the orange down. You get sick? Got sick. Threw up the hot dogs? Threw up the hot dogs. But we won the tournament. Must have been the hot dogs. Who knows? Said Roger with a smile. I shake my head incredulously, but I should not have been so astonished. I have known Rogers before. The next day, I meet a fellow in Mickey Mantle's sports bar on Central Park South. He is dressed in an expensive suit. He tells me that he roots for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Without much in the way of encouragement, he tells me that he always bets against the Steelers. I ask him why he always bets against the Steelers if he loves the Steelers. This is his response. When I bet them to win, they lose. When I bet them to lose, they win. I don't want them to lose, so I bet them to lose, because this way, either way, I win. I win if they win because I bet them to lose. I win at least money if they lose because I bet them to lose. Either way, if I bet them to lose, I win. No smile accompanies this tortuous explanation, and no vocalizations acknowledge that what he is saying could be convoluted. He relays the rationale as if it is completely rational. Now, I said I'd talk about some idiosyncratic people that I met. You meet people in Las Vegas. That last scene was in New York. But when you go to Las Vegas, you meet people who are really out of a Damon Runyon novel. They're idiosyncratic characters. There are pontificators, people who will tell you that they are wise beyond their years. One fellow admonished me because I made a bet, and he asked me when I made the bet, and he said, no. You got to bet before the stupid money comes to town. So there was something he referred to as stupid money, which was a bad bet. Another person had told me to bet the dogs, the dogs, the dogs, the dogs. This was his mantra, meaning the underdogs, the favorites and underdogs. Another person would tell me that you should always bet the money line. There are screamers, people who will scream at television sets. The games are not played in Las Vegas. They're just televised in Las Vegas. So you have people sitting in front of television sets screaming at a player in Buffalo, New York, to choke. Choke, as if that's going to matter to somebody who is 2,000 miles away. You guys couldn't throw the ball into the ocean, screams another. Take it when you're, let's say you bet on a game and the differential is 8 points and the spread is 7. Well, a basket at a wrong time cause you to lose a bet, even though it won't change the nature of the game. So if you bet on the team that is giving away 7 points and the spread is 8 points and the opponent has the ball, you don't want them to shoot because that could change your bet. So you'd have people scream, take a knee, a football term, which is to stop the play, or lose like a man. People would be self-effacing. There was one fellow on the line. People wait on a long line to place a bet, and he would stay on the line, and he'd say, the only luck I have is bad luck. The only luck. And it was a riot because he's standing on the line that nobody is compelling him to be on, convinced that he's going to lose money when he gets to the front. Another fellow told me that if I wanted a winner, just listen to his bets and do the opposite of what he does, because he always loses. There were some great T-shirts I see in Las Vegas. One was disguised as a responsible adult. Another, which was telling in a way, said, good coaches win, great coaches cover, which means cover the spread. So that's not good enough to win, you want to cover the spread. And on a Sunday morning at about 7 o'clock in the morning, I see a guy drinking a beer at a bar. And he's looking over his bracket sheets, and he really looks dour. And he has this T-shirt on that was classic. It said, my anger management class pisses me off. And I just thought that I would love to interview this guy, but I don't think he would be a right person to contact at 7 o'clock in the morning. This next excerpt describes some of the characters that I met. I'm standing on a line, and in front of me are 3 students from James Madison University. And behind me is an ironworker from Chicago. And we're waiting on a long line at the Flamingo Hotel to place our bets. And as I said, I get the sense that if you got up to the window and there were, hypothetically, no more tickets available for you to bet on Albany, the person at the line would bet on the other team just so that they would make it interesting because it's an amusement park. Anyway, I'm going to read a section from these people from James Madison University. This has some language in it, so because this is going to go on YouTube. This is the expurgated edition of this, so the language has been taken out. I trust that everybody will know what the real words were. All right. Directly in front of me on the queue are 3 buddies from James Madison University, a Virginia state school located in Harrisonburg, Virginia. I overhear their chatter. One of them, whom the others refer to as Buster, says that North Texas has great athletes, according to a fellow he met at a blackjack table the night before. Buster suggests to his friends that they place a $100 bet on North Texas because of this wisdom from someone he happened to sit adjacent to while they were both squandering their savings playing blackjack. One of the other Harrisonburg friends leaves as we wait on this interminable line. He returns with 3 beers for his crew. Just like yesterday at the Paris, which is another hotel that I had been at the day before, these fellows hoist their brews and with amusement make the same toast I'd heard 24 hours before. Top of the morning, they say, as they begin knocking their Coronas back at 8:45 a.m. Behind me is an iron worker from Chicago. He tells me that he lost $4 grand on Duke losing to Virginia Commonwealth yesterday. I cannot believe that someone lost $4,000 in one day betting on these games. The expression on my face must reflect my disbelief because Mike from Chicago explains in more detail. I didn't actually lose $4 grand. It's that I should have won $4 grand, which I lost because bleeping Duke could not beat VCU. He proceeds to tell me about this can't-miss parlay he had that only required Duke to beat VCU. VCU against Duke. I mean, I'm talking the money line here, not the spread. Duke could not even beat VCU. Cost me $4,000. Mike from Chicago, now $4,000 short, continues to expound. He tells me that he travels the entire country working on one construction project or another, but he always comes to Las Vegas for March Madness. I tell the wife that I'm going out with $3 grand and I intend to make $4 grand. How's it going this year, I say, more to be wise than to get a straight answer. He waves a paw and snorts, forget about it. Bleeping Duke. But I love Georgia Tech and Notre Dame today. As we continue to converse, I begin to wonder if his wife doesn't figure it is worth the $3 grand just to get this guy out of the house for 4 days. Mike explains that he only bets the money line on the parlays because that's where you can make the cash. This information and betting strategy is at odds, of course, with the news that he has not yet won anything. Oblivious to this irony, Mike continues to explain the merits of moneyline betting. You're pissing your dough away otherwise, says a man who was $4,000 in the hole by his own accounting. Now, I, Alan, can't get my 9:15 bet in on time at the Flamingo, and it's a blessing since I would have gone emotionally with Albany. Still, it's frustrating not to be able to place the wager. The Harrisonburg trio is furious because they are unsure now if they will get the money down on the North Texas game, which is scheduled to start only a few minutes after the Albany, Virginia tip-off. The Harrisonburg three know the North Texas game is a lock on the basis of the wisdom spewed about North Texas from someone at a blackjack table. The fellow at the front of the window seems to be asking many questions. Get the hell from the window, screams Buster. He takes a swig from his beer and shakes his head. Oh, what the hell, he says. This is better than contemporary political theory with Robinson. This gets a round of laughter from his James Madison University pals. It is now time for another toast. Here's to the poor bastards now sitting in contemporary political theory, says Buster. The boys from Harrisonburg. The boys from Harrisonburg drink up. So what are my conclusions? As I said, I found that the people I met in Las Vegas, while some were offensive in some ways, and they often consume too much booze, my perceptions are different from normal perceptions, that is, the common perceptions. I told a cousin what I was doing, and my cousin said, oh, you're gonna study degenerates. And I said, no, that's not the case. They're not degenerates. That's not my sense. I think a value of any book really is to depict reality. And one of the things I found was that there was really a distinction between the notion of the people who bet in Las Vegas, at least these 4 days, the Thursday through Sunday of March Madness weekend, and the reality. Because these people were just sports fans, that it was a lark. So the last excerpt discusses this point. What's happening in this last excerpt is I'm talking with a sportsbook manager whose name I use is Charlie because he didn't want me to use his real name. He had just told me that Albany University, my alma mater, was going to beat Virginia in the first round of the tournament, which I knew was not the case. Because I'm an alum and because I was writing this book, I had studied Albany throughout the year, and Albany had no chance to beat Virginia. But what I found interesting about this, he was the third person to have told me this, and he had also made another claim, which I thought was intelligent. He said that most bettors don't bet on the actual team. They bet on a construction of the team, or academics might call it construction of the team. That is, something that is made up on the basis of media communications and discourse. This is a notion of what the team is based on what you hear about the team. So, for example, he said that people would bet on Kentucky if 5 50-year-old drunks were playing for Kentucky because people have heard a lot about Kentucky. And this was his claim, but what I found interesting was the rationale that he used for Albany to beat Virginia was the same rationale. He was basing his decision about Albany on a prior team. The year before, Albany, if you follow college sports, you might know, Albany almost beat Connecticut in the first round of the tournament. Albany was a 16 seed. They almost beat Connecticut. They were ahead by double digits before in that second half. They didn't win, but everybody started thinking, well, Albany must be good. They must be great because, after all, they almost beat Connecticut. But that was last year. This year it was a different team, and yet he was thinking about Albany in terms of last year. So my point in this last segment is to say that there's a distinction between what we think is real and what is actually real, and it transcends sports. The construction of reality versus reality transcends sports. So this last excerpt is about that. I asked Charlie if he had any strong feelings on this year's tournament, and was startled when he told me that he had Albany to beat both Virginia and its likely second-round opponent, Tennessee. When he said this, he became the third person who had made such a prediction. And this, I am as certain as one can be about such matters, will not happen. Charlie's pick is ironic because it illustrates the power and lure of constructed reality, the precise factor that he identified as being the Achilles heel of the wagering public. To bettors, even knowledgeable ones like Charlie Martin, the Albany that was invited to the tournament on a fluke cannot compete with the Albany that almost beat Connecticut on national television last year. Albany in 2007 just was invited on a fluke without going into it in much detail. It is possible, like any bettor who is sure of something, that my reasoning might prove to be faulty in retrospect. Charlie is the third person who seems knowledgeable and who has argued strongly for Albany, but it doesn't make sense. Charlie argued that the more that you know, the wiser you can be when making a bet. But what happens when what you think you know is merely a composite of spurious data? Then your constructions, deductions, and communications are based on a precarious foundation. Then what you know, and by extension what a society or subculture knows, actually becomes an impediment, to effective decision making. These constructions are particularly insidious impediments because they're dressed up as immutable truths, promulgated in our communications as facts, and consequently can become embedded in our individual and collective consciousness. How good is Albany? What is Las Vegas? Who are the March Madness bettors? A key to understanding betting, bettors, culture, or anything else is the ability to accurately depict realities and make distinctions between what is real and what are inaccurate constructions. Of course, the damage related to substituting constructed reality for actual reality has far more problematic repercussions outside the world of sports than inside it. Notions of love, family, and marriage, for example, are really only constructions, conceptualizations advanced by our experiences, communications, and media representations. These constructions can be illusory, spurious, and insidious. Romantic love is, of course, multifaceted and can exist in various forms. Families are complex, and each one is unique. If our conceptions of family and love are based on monolithic constructions, and our families and loves are inconsistent with these notions, we may feel like failures when our relationships are not akin to these constructions of reality. We may even attempt to seek out relationships that conform to the illusion and try to assemble families to meet the constructed reality. The disparity between actual experience and constructed reality can be depressing when these two unrelated entities collide. The ability to distinguish what is from what appears to be, especially in an environment with powerful and frequent mediated communications, is a significant determinant of individual and societal success and progress for Charlie and everyone else. So, in short, in sum, I felt that the people in this was an interesting subculture and important to be able to make a distinction between who they are and what they appear to be. Where the book has taken me, it's been a little heady. There are people who've been interested in it, some bettors, some people. There's a fellow who owns the Gambling Bookshop who contacted me. I'm going to be doing a podcast in the Gamblers Bookshop. It's a place which is a haven in Las Vegas for books on games of choice. I'm doing some blogging. I was on Only a Game on Saturday, which was a great experience for me. Very nerve-wracking, in fact, but that's an NPR program. So anyway, it's been a heady experience, but an enjoyable one. I thought today I would just talk a little bit about how I came to it, what I found, and read some experts. And I hope you find the book intriguing, and I'll be glad to take questions that you might have. Sure. Anybody? Questions?
I'll start with a question.
Okay.
I was just going to ask you talk about the focus on Las Vegas, and if you've done any comparisons about other cities and their gambling or betting culture compared to, Las Vegas is sort of the mecca for gambling, but I know a lot of people have office pools or sort of be interested in particular March Madness and bracket betting in general. So if you how that
Sure. Have I done a comparison between March Madness bettors and the average bettor? The actual answer is really no. The Las Vegas is the only place in the country where you can legally bet on a sporting event. The only allusion I make in the book is to the fact that there are so many people who are involved in this that it has become part of the culture. That because of March Madness, our culture is now affected by March Madness. You see March Madness advertisements. You read promotions for various things on the basis of March Madness. Restaurants advertise they're going to have free chicken wings because of March Madness. You get some the term "on the bubble," which means to as it relates to March Madness that you might get invited or you might not get invited to the tournament, has become pretty common. So the specific answer is no. I haven't compared it to people in office pools, and mostly focused on the bettors who legally do it in Las Vegas.
I'm wondering if you elicited what the motivation for going to Vegas was versus watching it at home.
Okay. Yeah, It's interesting because I did ask that question when I spoke with people, and I think I got disingenuous answers. I mean, because someone would say, "I'm going to win." You know, I'm going to win. I've got a tip. I mean, I'm really good. I know that Duke is going to win this time, and I have a system. That was another thing that you heard. People with systems. People have huge, detailed books, like college students who might not have constructed a 40-page paper have an 80-page book which describes all the nuances of the March Madness. And so they have a system, and they're going to win some money. They will say that I came because I think I can do well and I've got a technique, but then they'll describe how much fun they had. The first person I met in 2007 was on a Wednesday. The tournament starts on a Thursday, and he had gotten there on a Wednesday to prep. And he was excited about the tournament and told me about all his wisdom, which every bet that he told me was wrong. He told me a bunch of things that he was going to bet the next day. But then he said, "What difference does it make? I'm having a great time. I come here every year. This is fantastic. I'm beating my buddies tomorrow. Been here for 22 years. Only missed 1 year because I was sick, way sick. Otherwise I would have been there." And he seemed like a kid waiting for his birthday. So while there might be individuals who would claim that, there were individuals who would claim that they came there because they were going to score. In fact, they were coming there to rendezvous with their friends. So many people had been there for their 8th, 9th, or 10th years. They met up with college buddies, and this was their weekend. The crowd is almost entirely male, and the male bonding, you know, they're out there with people they went to college with, and they have funny nicknames, and they're wearing garb that's peculiar to their institution. There was the Wisconsin contingent was very well identified because they had T-shirts on that read "The Grateful Red," and they traveled in herds. The Grateful Red traveled in herds. And before the Michigan State game, I was at a hotel called the Imperial Palace, and a whole table of rooters got up and started to sing the Michigan State fight song. A woman was dressed as a UCLA Bruin. She was actually like a bear. She was at the thing. So there are people who really get into it, but I think it's more the emotion than the money.
I have a question. Can I sit down and?
Sure.
I was wondering, thank you, Alan. This was fascinating and very, very fun to listen to. I was wondering whether you did talk about in the book about any of the women who you did come across and what their relationship was to this like incredibly masculine space.
Well, you know, as I said, they were mostly men. There is a scene that I described where there is a woman who is rooting for Texas A&M, and she's really serious. And then another one where a person is giving out. She was not a bettor. She was a serious fan, and she had little mementos for her team, and she was giving them to people, asking them to hold them because she thought that would bring the team's luck. Would you do me a favor and hold this? And then there were spouses who would come by every once in a while and say, "How are my boys doing?" And you know, with a tight face, the boys are pretending that they're doing well while they're sacrificing the mortgage. So most of the people that I saw were men, and there were occasionally clusters of women and who were betting just like the men were, but most of the crowd was male, except for some real serious diehard people. Just on that note, yesterday I was at the CAA tournament, you know, doing research on this, and there was a woman in the lobby of the hotel rooting for George Mason University, who was dressed up entirely in green. I have never seen anything like it. From toe to head, with a head green, it was a one-piece outfit, something that you might expect someone to wear when they're freezing, but it was just entirely green, like right out of the Emerald City, and just walking around and you know, root for the team. Lots of George Mason University women fans at the Colonial Athletic Association tournament.
I was wondering if you if you have found that most people bet to win money or people bet for the thrill of winning the bets.
Okay, I think that if again you might get disingenuous answers if you ask them, because they are betting. They're sitting and they're poring over these betting sheets. There are these big betting sheets which explain the odds, and they're sitting there and they're discussing. Can California cover the spread? Does this team have a good guard? So they're betting because they want to win. But as I mentioned, I think if they got to the window and they found that there were no more tickets available for their team, they would bet for the other team. So I think mostly it's to the rush for rooting for somebody. What happened on a regular basis, I'd get on a line and I'd ask somebody who they're betting on, and they would say, I don't know yet. They're waiting on a line to give their money away, and they don't know. I kept thinking, the casino managers must be hysterical. What kind of business is this? You've got people waiting on a line to hand over the money. They're not going to get the money back, probably. And they as soon as they hand this money in and lose, they get back on the line again. So my answer to your question is, I think they really do want to win, but they're really into it for the thrill, for the enjoyment of the whole ambience.
I was just wondering, did you hear any rumors about where you think that point shaving exists or is prevalent in college sports because you're dealing with such kids and such vast sums of money? What gets you to get to them?
Yeah, there were a couple of incidents related to that.
Can you define that?
Okay, sure. Question was about point shaving. The basketball games most of the bets in basketball are based on a spread. So Albany will play Virginia, and the spread, I remember, was 7.5 points. So if you are a gangster and you say to a player, look, it's fine if you win, but only win by 5 points, because then we'll make money. So your team will win, everybody will be happy. So you shave a few points. The score is close, you throw the ball out of bounds, you shave a few points. And there have been scandals in college basketball in the 1950s, 1960s, 1980s, right here at Boston College. In 2007, there was a basketball referee, a professional basketball referee, who was accused of point shaving. So did I see any of that? There were a couple of episodes which were related to it in this way. At one point, we were watching Oakland University, which is a team from Michigan, play Kansas, I believe it was. And the spread was like 31 points. Kansas much better. And Kansas was ahead by about 33 points with 10 minutes to go. And we figured, well, this is when the substitutes are going to come in to the game. But the substitutes didn't come into the game. And I'm saying, why aren't the substitutes coming into the game? If they hope they're going to play, why aren't they going to come in the game? And then I mentioned that T-shirt, good coaches win, great coaches cover. So it occurred to me, is it possible that the coaches are aware of the spread? My feeling is, after watching it, I've been there since, except for 2002, every year since then, that they're not. That's not a conscious thing. The coaches are just nervous about winning, and they don't want to give up any chance. So I'm not making any claim about that I thought that was happening. But did I think that people thought it was happening? In that game, I can remember people saying, hey, what are you waiting for? Senior prom, you're up by 30 points. Put the subs in, all right? In another game, Pittsburgh was playing against Virginia Commonwealth. And a fellow was on the foul line, and all he had to do was make a foul shot to make Virginia Commonwealth a winner. It's complicated. Virginia Commonwealth actually would have lost the game if he made the foul shot, but bettors on Virginia Commonwealth would have won because of the spread. And he missed both shots. And a fellow in front of me wheeled around and said, "Fix-a-rooney! Fix-a-rooney!" The fix is in on that one. Some serious point-shaving garbage going down right there. So there were people who thought about it. But in my opinion, I don't think it doesn't seem to me, and I watch a lot of college basketball now, that's happening. You'd have to be pretty, first of all, if you're shaving, it's illicit, and you succumb to that gangster notion, you know you're doing something wrong, even if you buy into the rationale that you're not really hurting your team, because you are. But I don't think so, in the games that I've watched. I don't see coaches thinking for a second about it. It doesn't seem to me that at the end of the game, for example, you might be up by 6 points, and you might have a 7-point spread, but the other team is not contesting. the play, and I've seen coaches just dribble the ball out. So they're not trying to get another basket. They're going to lose. Then they're going to win the game, but not beat the spread. They just dribble the ball out. And I've never, it doesn't ever seem to me that someone is thinking about it. Well, thank you very much for coming. I appreciate it, and hope you enjoy it.